This conference will now be recorded.
I can mute you here from the control panel, but I'd prefer if you were able to manage it and come off and on mute on your own so we can have a little bit more discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Blake. We'll now call this meeting of Iowa 911 Communications Council for Thursday, August 13th to order. Before I start off, I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that everyone knows that once again, Iowa and public safety and definitely 911 has been handed another set of challenges in this wonderful year of 2020. And from what I'm seeing, there are a lot of folks working in the 911 field that are working in some pretty primitive conditions right now using very old school technology in some cases, and yet the resiliency of the people that are charged with these tasks are doing an outstanding job. And my hat's off to 911 communications persons throughout the state for keeping the ball rolling and getting everyone where they need to be and keeping the people of Iowa safe. So very good. And I dare say that I hope that this is the last set of challenges that this year hands us, but I better be careful what I say. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us. Kara, could you please do a roll call of the council members, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Tracy Bearden.
Here.
Lawrence Hartpence. Sheriff Rotter is here. George Griffith.
Here.
Mike Bryant. And Mark Murphy was going to be gone. Tom Berger. Jeff Anderson.
Here.
Robbie Johannesson. Rob Dennert.
Here.
Jack D'Angelo was going to be absent. Tim Keeble.
Here.
Okay, I'm going to go back up to see if Lawrence Hartpence is here. Okay, Mike Bryant. Tom Berger. Robbie Johannesson. I see Tom Berger has arrived, so we have Tom. That gives us a quorum, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kara. If I could please have a motion to approve today's agenda.
Motion by Griffith.
Thank you, Griffith. Do I have a second?
By Bearden.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. And likewise for the approval of the July 9th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Chairman, if I could say something, I'm going to amend those for one thing. Jack D'Angelo said that he was on but couldn't get unmuted, so I am going to amend those to say that he was present.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Anderson.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Griffith.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion approves. Thank you. Blake, do you have a report for us?
I do. Let me get my slides up here real quick. Just in advance, I have a lot to cover here. So if you have any questions along the way, try to jump in or type it in the chat. I'll try to keep my eye out, and I will try to pause as I move from topic to topic so we can make sure that if there are any questions, we can get those addressed. So first, I do want to talk about the quarterly payments. I was able to just finalize the expenditure report for the quarter just this morning. Sent it out to the council, and I know that was not much notice, but I got it to you as soon as I could. So first, for the payments, nothing out of the ordinary. Again, we haven't had to withhold any surcharge from anyone for delinquent reports or anything like that. So payments are basically what they usually are. We did have to wait for some rather large surcharge checks to come into us. So that kind of set us off on a little snowball that has delayed a few things along the way. So, but regular payments, and now I will show the expenditure report, which again, I just finalized today, sent out to the council. We'll get it posted on our website shortly after this council meeting. So you can see wireless surcharge came in nearly $7 million. Again, that is basically normal. Again, we had to wait for some rather large checks to come in, but we got them and process payments. 1.2 million was transferred to the operating surplus. And then I will get into the details of this here in a little bit, but this is the end of the fiscal year. So we are going through the process of doing the end of year pass through. I will show you, I have a slide for some of this information. End of year pass through came out to be about $17,000 per PSAP. Earlier in the year, we had estimated $25,000 per PSAP. Some rather large invoices came in for some of the non-recurring projects that we are having underway, so that lowered that amount. You can see that our total obligations, and that is the non-recurring payments, basically the large contracts that we have for shared services and wireline migration, came out to $7.3 million. So knowing that those bills are coming due, we hold those back. 3.8 million is the catastrophic reserve amount that we keep for a rainy day, which means that the total pass-through amount is around $2 million. And you can see last year it was about $3.6 million. So I know it's a little bit lower than what we had anticipated earlier in the year, and that's why I sometimes hesitate to do that estimation. But I know budgeting is hard enough when we don't know what that end of year pass-through amount will be. One thing to keep in mind, the last 2 years now that we've done this, the point is to keep as little as possible in the operating surplus. So the starting point this year was lower than it has been in the past as well. So keep in mind that once we also go ahead and make those payments on those obligations and encumbrances, the surplus continues to grow as we put money into it. Next year could be higher. So it's a revolutionary fund, and it ebbs and flows. So any questions on the end of year pass-through amounts?
Okay.
And again, we really just put the finishing touches on the end of the quarter, the end of the fiscal year, yesterday and today. So I just submitted those payments to be made by our department. I would expect them probably end of next week to hit your accounts. Okay. There's no questions on that, and I'll again pause throughout my presentation here, so if you have any questions, we can always come back to it. I did want to provide a quick update on the derecho that we experienced in Iowa earlier this week. A couple of things that we have done from an ESF2, which is Emergency Communications, from the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We've worked with DPS and ISICS a couple times. One to get the SDR trailer from Johnson County over to Benton County. Thanks to Wally Walzer for doing that as well, and Johnson County, who actually transported it. We worked with ISICS to get the ISICS radio system over to Illinois in support of Clinton County operations, and that was a request from local emergency management. So thanks, Chris, for helping with that as well. We've also engaged the FCC. This is kind of new for us, and I'm going to show a spreadsheet here. They have a disaster information reporting system, and most often that is used in a hurricane, and it really shows good, detailed information on outages. We had not used that in Iowa, so it was a little bit of a feeling out process, and we just got kind of the first good data spill this morning. The FCC actually also takes this information and puts some verbiage behind it, produces a report, and waiting for that to hit the FCC website yet this morning, but this is the raw data. So this kind of gives us a snapshot of what is up, what's down in the counties. One fairly large caveat that because this is the first spill, if you will, not all carriers are reporting at this point, and it is voluntary. But again, it kind of gives us an idea of what's out there as far as cell sites. One thing to note, kind of the details at the bottom, is the explanation for why those sites are out. And you can see the vast majority are out either because of power loss at the site or transport backhaul to the tower. So again, thanks to the FCC, thanks to Jim Lundstedt with CISA for really helping get the ball rolling on this. I would have liked to get it a little bit earlier in the process, but again, it's the kind of the first time, and it was a feeling out process. So glad to have it this morning. We'll have it daily going forward. And for those of you that have access to WebEOC, once that kind of polished report from the FCC gets published, we'll make sure to post that in WebEOC as well. Another thing that we worked with on during the storm, Johnson County is the backup for Cedar Rapids Joint Communications Center, and in turn, Cedar Rapids is the backup for Johnson County. So both of those PSAPs were receiving a lot of calls, and operators were busy, and calls were kind of going back and forth. So we implemented an emergency policy routing to route Johnson County's overflow over to Blackhawk County to alleviate kind of that log jam. But during about the 2-hour time frame before we put that in place, Johnson County ended up answering 269 calls that were normally intended for Cedar Rapids. So that's on top of their own 911 traffic that was getting through. So that was quite a high number for those about 2 hours that calls were going back and forth between the two centers. Overall, we have no records of a 911 call that was in the state's system within the EZNet that got dropped. There were certainly calls that probably couldn't enter the 911 system in Iowa because of tower congestion. And there were certainly PSAPs that were impacted and rolling over to backup sites. But as far as we can tell, there were no dropped 911 calls once it hit the EZNet, once it hit the next gen 911 system. So that is good. It kind of designed, worked as it was designed. Any questions on disaster response? And I think Sheriff Rotter did a good job of kicking us off and thanking everyone that's been involved all week. All right, I will move on to shared services. We are kind of hitting the month of August now, where we had really planned to roll out the dual connectivity to the shared service sites. That would mean that those that are on the Zetron shared service would be connected to the hosts through both ICN and FirstNet. That is still underway. We're expecting to do that still this month, but we have not implemented that thus far. So that is coming soon, and should bolster the redundancy and reliability of those that are on the shared services. As far as wireline migration schedule, 7 PSAPs will be migrated hopefully by the end of the day. There's 2 in progress that will be hopefully taken care of today. The schedule on the right is already a little bit out of date. There's a handful that, for various reasons, were not able to make their conversion. A couple were scheduled for Tuesday, and we're still inundated with dealing with derecho and storm activity. And then a couple were had a couple technological challenges that were unanticipated and had to roll back. So that is the tentative schedule, but like I said, it's already a little bit behind. I want to show, I'm going to come back to that last slide, but I want to show the extended schedule, and it's very much subject to change. but you can kind of see, through the end of October, what we have scheduled out. So as I mentioned, I was going to come back to this last bullet. There's kind of been a discussion simmering in the background for a little while now. And I think it's probably a good time to bring it up. I know Jack D'Angelo wanted to even last month and couldn't get off mute. So had some follow-up questions after the council meeting. Wanted to bring him up again today and unfortunately had a storm-related meeting that took him away from the council today. So I said I would bring it up, and certainly if there's any dialogue or discussion, we can have it. When we undertook the wireline migration project, it was with the intention of taking away costs that the PSAPs traditionally bore. So alley costs and taking away wireline transport costs. And to a point, we are doing that. By all means, when your PSAP is converted, you can order disconnects of your CAMA circuits from CenturyLink. Those are the circuits from the selective router. And you can order the disconnect of your alley circuits from CenturyLink. However, one thing that we had not anticipated, weren't necessarily aware of, at least myself in my position was not aware of, perhaps some of my predecessors may have been, but I was not, was the special access tariffs and the alley charges that wireline providers bill to the PSAPs. So right now, I don't have a good answer on the future of those items. Again, our intent at the beginning of this project was kind of all-inclusive, taking away those costs at the PSAP level. But again, I don't know that we were aware of those and we're aware of the extent of those costs. We are working a couple different processes or areas to kind of sort through that. A couple questions into the Iowa Utilities Board. I also know it's a topic that the FCC is looking into. At the moment, really the only thing I have is status quo for the future. Whatever those costs are, I would say they probably should continue to maintain the same relationships that exist right now, but just know that those conversations are going on. And just as soon as there's any enlightening information on the future of that, I certainly will get that information out. There's probably a couple different trains of thought on those costs. If it's something that should be borne by the customer, by the telco as a cost of doing business, by the PSAP as has historically been done, or by the state. And again, I don't have a good answer for you other than status quo for now for those special access tariffs and any alley costs for alley changes that are currently built to the PSAP. So I know that was a lot, and I want to pause and see if there's any comments, feedback, or discussion. All right, I'm not hearing anything. So again, by all means, once the wireline migration is complete, I send out an email that kind of piggybacks on the go live information that will kind of give instructions on how to go about contacting CenturyLink, removing those CAMA circuits, removing any alley links that you might have. So that information will be provided once your conversion is made. And certainly more to follow on the rest of that discussion. But again, wanted to get it in front of the council. Moving to the GIS grant information, again, the benchmarks have increased very slightly. Really just the alley to road center line moving from 95% accuracy to 98% accuracy. In July, the first month of the fiscal year, the first month of the first 6-month period, 10 counties met the benchmark for a total of $60,000. Moving to the current council travel, public education and training fund, there were no requests for this month, so we still have quite a bit of funding available. 91,000, almost 92,000 remains available for any interested parties in helping fund any public education or training for their agency. And with that, I covered a little bit. I don't know if Cody Brink from Zetron is on the call and could give a bit of more of a shared service update. Cody?
Yes, thank you, Blake. So pretty light on what we've got for updates here for this meeting. We've got, of course, the 2 migrated Alley and Wildlife Services, more to come. We've got Humboldt, Iowa, Shelby, Marion County with deployment schedules that we're still firming up in conjunction with that migration. Then, of course, the upgrades that were completed in July. On the next slide, we're going to have our updated map, which is going to show the different locations that are live. So that's all I've got for this month.
All right, thanks, Cody. Bill or Mike Lauer on a wireline migration update. I know I again already covered some of that, but any update from Comtech or ICN on that project?
Mike Lauer's not. You can go ahead, Bill, if you want, or I can. Doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Blake. Yeah, so as Blake mentioned, we do have PSAPs that are in the queue. We are moving forward on plenty of this project towards that. Again, if you are one of those PSAPs that we had to move off, or you hear of something has to be rescheduled, it's actually a fairly fluid process, and it's really easy, and all vendors involved are usually able to get things rescheduled sometimes within a week or maybe even a couple weeks of when that happens towards that. What we have talked about doing is sometimes things get moved towards the end of the line, which in this case would be end of October if had to be, not the end of the overall cut. So if you have any questions on what does this look like towards PSAPs being rescheduled, that's just one of those things to where it's not months and months and months out unless you request that for some reason. And that's the beautiful part about this, is we do have flexibility to move things forward with that. As for network side, the network is up from a large standpoint of things. We do have a couple trunks that we are still looking to bring up in some of our selective router locations, Council Bluffs, Cedar Falls, and Sioux City, and then Des Moines will be next week. And those are just initially just what the 911 calls transfer from CenturyLink to ICN and Comtech network. That's all been going well, and we've been have had thankfully no issues with that going forward. We have not had any trouble issues on the network as of yet, since even the seven PSAPs have been migrated over, or at least hopefully by the end of the day. That number. So as of right now, everything is running smooth, and even with the outages and everything going forward from the storm, the network has stayed up and has been solid. So kudos to all teams involved with that, CenturyLink, Comtech, and also ICN's trying our best to make sure that we provide a cohesive system for everyone as we go forward into the NGCS world and realm. The only other thing, just as a go-ahead, we did know that there were 9 counties that were considered non-enhanced from a perspective of CenturyLink, and what that means is there was just local telcos that were direct trunking into those 9 PSAPs. We do have that list. I'm not going to go over it now with anyone, but you will be, if you're a local telco or a PSAP that is a part of that, you will be reached out to. I already have done some initial contact to the 9 that are there, but we will be, looking to establish local trunks outside of, what's already there with CenturyLink. And there's two different thoughts that are going towards that, of how we will get that done, to either get you into the selective router network or just direct local trunking towards that. That conversation is happening right now. So of the 9 counties, like I said, you've already been reached out to, and we'll continue to have that conversation. If you have any questions on that, if you have any questions on PSAP cuts, or any questions on do I have a local trunk here? What are some things I can do to kind of figure these things out? And there's been some gimmies and gotchas, especially sites that have their own standalone alley systems. Feel free to reach out to me. Reach out to Mike Lauer at the ICN. You can reach out to Bill Burnett at Comtech. You can reach out to Blake too as well. I mean, we are all available to help towards that, to make this, you know, as successful and seamless as a process can be towards that. And we've got some good momentum going forward, and we'll continue to do so. So with that, that's about the gist of what I have. Does anyone have any questions for me? If not, I'll hand it to Bill or Blake.
Yeah, Billy, if you're on, go ahead. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, okay. Just real quick, let's see, just want to remind everybody that all PSAPs have to continue dual provisioning throughout this entire process. And I think we've had some questions come in about that, a little bit of confusion, but just to, you know, again, a reminder that, you know, you have to continue to provision on both systems until all PSAPs are cut. I have been providing weekly updates. I know I skipped a week anyway. If you're on the call and you have not been getting updates from Comtech, you know, like I said, I know there's at least 1 week that I missed, but if you've been not getting updates, please reach out to me. I know that even contacts, you know, at all the PSAPs throughout the state is fluid as well. So it's possible you haven't been getting those, and let me know and we'll get you added on that list. I expect to have one out either later today or tomorrow, a weekly update. I also noticed on last week's update, I think I caused some confusion. I gave a list of, you know, here's our schedule, more longer term, and then there were some PSAPs that were not on those lists, and that didn't mean we lost track of you. It just was, you know, an oversight on my part to, you know, and I'll change that this week to make sure everybody is on the list, even if you don't have a cut date, just so that you're aware that that we have you in our sites. So those are about the only updates I had for this. Any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. So that wraps up the program manager report for the month. If there's any questions, I'll take them now again, or we can again move on with the rest of the meeting.
Okay, Blake, thank you very much. Thank you for all the updates from everyone. Moving on to training fund requests, as Blake had mentioned, we don't have any training fund requests right now, but I did want to bring up something that was brought to my attention here as a sort of a what if, which I think we're going to be facing here as a new normal, and that's dealing with virtual training sessions. And I was asked by one of our 911 colleagues to see if that was something that would be permissible using training fund requests. My knee-jerk reaction to that was, so long as it met all the other requirements for training funds and attendance numbers were there, I really don't see anything that would prevent that. But obviously we haven't been presented with a request yet, but I'm just throwing that out there for the council to kind of be thinking about that, because I would be very, very surprised if we don't see some training fund requests based on virtual training. And I know there are agencies throughout the state that are moving to virtual training, and some of them sounds like they're going so well that it might be the new way of a vast amount of their training. So with COVID or not, it's probably something we're going to start seeing a lot of and well into the future. So just throwing that out there, think about it. If you see any issues, we can talk about that when we're presented with a request, but I just didn't want it to catch everybody by surprise. So moving on.
Chair, this is Tracy Beard. I know with the Westcom request, they did have that option for virtual, and the decision was made to hold it in person if possible, but to still have it open virtual so they can maximize the number of people who could attend. And I know that's being well received by people across the state. So I think it's something we should encourage, because it maximizes the training funds that we are presenting and opening the doors to other people to attend who may not be able to have the the funding for travel. And so I think it's a really good thing if we do that, especially with it becoming more of a new normal too.
Right, Tracy, you're exactly right. And I think it really might go into, it might actually make the training funds even more efficient, because it does somewhat level the playing field. Rural areas can have the same type of training and present it throughout the state, whether you're being presented from, you know, a small county or a Polk or Lynn County, wouldn't really matter. And I would have to imagine that it would bring down the cost, because a lot of the cost of training is simply travel, room and board for presenters, and that eliminates that. So you might actually see more training sessions being presented throughout the state for the same amount of money, which would certainly be a good thing. And I love the combination of being able to perhaps go in person or be online. It just opens the door for a lot of people. So I think you're right. I think it is going to be something we're going to see a lot of with or without COVID. So anything else about that? Okay.
Just a comment within the chat room. Darren from Westcom wanted to add that there are currently 75 people signed up for that training request that we approved last month. So I think that adds, you know, as a significant positive to having virtual training available.
Yeah, even in bad situations, it's amazing what good things do come of it. And I think that's a good example of something like that. So very good. Okay, we'll move on to reports of officers, boards, and standing committees. Do we have any technical advisories? Okay, moving on then. Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Update on Interoperability Governance Board, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, and can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right, excellent, thank you. So just some updates for the board. I know you guys have a full agenda today, so I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. The ISIX platform as a whole is still operating. We never really had any outages during the event. We do have some sites that took on the full force of category, I believe they were 3 hurricane force winds and possibly higher. They do need to be slightly realigned. For the most part, all the end users are experiencing, if they're experiencing anything at this point, is the occasional site trunking hit with mobile and portable radios. Some comm centers that relied on various types of backhaul like fiber may have had an interruption as the fiber had some issues and was brought back online. But all those issues appear to be taken care of at this point. You may still get the occasional site trunking hit as some sites are realigned, but so far the network as a whole has been functioning exceptionally well during this event. We are running on generators at several sites. We're aware of the burn rate of fuel and when they may need to be refueled, so we've got plans in place for that as well to ensure that that service continues. So things are running well. We're happy to have a radio network after that one. Update on TA requests from ICTAP. We were able to deliver the encryption planning and usage for administrators on July 30th. The goal of that one was to help comms administrators develop an understanding of encryption, and that was part 1 of a part 2 or 2-part webinar series. The feedback we got was very positive. We're focusing at the end of September now, following the storm, to try to get the second one delivered, so look for an announcement on that relatively shortly. We are, just a reminder that SOP and Communications Plan Review and Development TA is slated for September 15th and 16th. That'll run from 8 o'clock to 11:30 each day. That was the one that was postponed from March. We have sent emails out to those individuals that were previously registered, and the registration link is back open with the new updates in case more people want to sign up. Update quick on our PSAP grant. All the PSAPs that received equipment from us have completed a test call, so that's excellent. And I want to thank everyone involved with those PSAPs and getting that equipment installed and completing those test calls. It's a pretty heavy lift for you all, and the work you guys put into that is certainly appreciated. For those that want training, we've been able to accommodate requests either one-on-one in person or virtually. If anybody has any requests for training, we are certainly willing to fulfill that as quickly as possible. We did a few last month. We've got a few possibly coming up over the next 4 weeks as well. ISIX applications that were approved at the last board meeting. Iowa Department of Human Services signed up for level 1. I believe that was the Glenwood Resource Center. Wayne County Sheriff's Office level 2. Adams County was approved for an update to add some paging talk groups. That falls under level 3 since they have core connected consoles. Cass County updated their application to level 3. Butler County went to level 2. And Chickasaw County was approved for level 4 access. They are adding some sites. Applications that are up for approval today include the Bremer County Sheriff's Office for level 2. Clayton County is updating their participation to level 2, and Ida County is updating theirs to level 3. As far as some policy work by the board, we're working on updating our LTE deployable policy after some feedback from stakeholders was received on it. The air to ground channel policy is up for approval today as well. Quick update on status board. Over the past month, things have run well. Of course, if you were those that had internet that was affected by the storms, you may have lost access to a while, but the system as a whole ran well over the past month. Training is still available. You can still sign up for access as well. There's no cost for this. And the focus for people that have access, PSAPs, key administrative personnel, emergency management, and others are desired users. So if I may also add something to some initial talks before, Mr. Chair, we have held some virtual training sessions. If the council has any questions on how we found things to work, what worked well, what we're trying to fix, we're certainly willing to bring forth those perspectives for you. And finally, but probably most importantly, I want to thank everybody for their tireless work during the series of never-ending disasters we've had this year. The amount of work you guys put into everything without rest is greatly appreciated and won't go unforgotten. So my hat is off to you all for that. With that, I'll go ahead and take any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Chris, you mentioned that you did do a fair amount of virtual training. Were the numbers increased pretty well?
We had a lot of people sign up and we had a lot of people attend. And when you watch the attendance list, occasionally, since people are still in their office, they're going to get called back to their primary job. If you watch the attendance list throughout the session, you can see it kind of ebb and flow as people have to address things. Typically, most of our attendance during the sessions, I'm just trying to pull this off memory, have been somewhere between 85 to 90% of the registered attendees on at any one given time. There's always some that can't make it because other things come up. That's kind of the world we live in with public safety, but the success rate of getting people to the sessions virtually has been relatively high, so that's positive.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's always going to be one of the issues of being too close to the office when you're trying to do that training, and it's easier said than done, but you really have to try to carve out that time if you can, and I guess be virtually out of your office if you can, but that's easier said than done, I know, but obviously that would be an issue that might present itself. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on next, I think Jim Lundstedt from CISA is with us. Jim?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Sheriff and members of the board. Keep this very brief. Continuing to work with FCC and Blake and the ESF2 team to try to get relevant information to the group on outages and restoration priorities. This was the equivalent of a hurricane in the Midwest, and we have continuing challenges in just virtually every telecommunications aspect. I was incredibly surprised and pleased with the resilience of communications and 911 as we were monitoring this event. Hats off to Iowa for the planning and rollover strategies that seem to work very well, and the infrastructure that was lost, while considerable, will take time to restore, obviously, but the resilience was very evident. CISA continues to publish items of interest that I share with Blake and Chris on a fairly regular basis, including some new guidance on communications resilience and cybersecurity threats to 911. Obviously, Those are at the macro level nationwide and often not entirely applicable to your state. But I want to point out a couple of things that we are observing. There is an increasing trend in the telephone denial of service area that NENA, APCO, and CISA are watching pretty closely. We're developing a technology with our Science and Technology Directorate that uses artificial intelligence and real-time analysis that may be of service somewhere in the near future. It's basically a call center technology that's used by some of the mega banks and things like that that are often targeted by telephone denial of service. And we hope to see that brought to live production somewhere in the not too distant future. We also are continuing to observe a number of the traditional threats through phishing, smishing, and other activities, which probably seem less important right now, but recall that ransomware growth in 2020 has simply been astounding. And while we all hope we will not be a victim of it, we also have kicked off the technology area, study area with Science and Technology on a firewall enhancement that may be able to help thwart ransomware attacks. That more to come on that as that develops, but we are going to be reaching out to a few states and communities looking for candidates to work with us on that. Beyond that, I did want to share one success story. I won't attribute it to an individual, but talked to a number of people in the last few days, one of whom mentioned that WPS has been particularly useful with diminished access to wireless services. And one individual yesterday mentioned that, hey, I used GETS for the first time in a true disaster when I was trying to call in a trouble ticket through CenturyLink after failing to get through from our office on a call with the all circuits busy message. Remembered to try GETS and it went right through on the first time. Those programs are typically no cost to your agency. So after we get well into recovery, may be a good time to take a second look at what you have in your tool bag from GETS and WPS services. Other than that, continuing to monitor and support as best we can in a remote environment. Any questions for me, sir?
Okay, Jim, thank you very much. Moving on, Tracy, do we have any report for the Chapter 34A Administrative Code Committee update?
No, we don't. It seems like things are just not progressing. I'm hoping that within the next month we can have an update.
Okay, understandable. Likewise, do we have anybody from the Baseline Knowledge Committee on that can talk about anything that's happened there? Okay, I think we're dealing with obviously the same issue. Kind of hard to meet when all the things that are happening, so completely understandable. Are there any legislative issues that anyone would like to bring up? Okay, doesn't sound like we do. I'm not aware of any unfinished business or any new business, but if somebody has something, please bring it forward. And Blake, I believe we have no travel requests, which is not surprising in this state of affairs we're in.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Do we have any business from the floor then? Anything from any of our PSAP folks? Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Bearden.
Do I have a second?
Anderson.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us this morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.